So Jane, thanks so much for joining today. Very much looking forward to our conversation.
Thank you, Scott. It's a pleasure to be here.
So as we kick things off, let's start a little bit about talking about the consumer. And as you look at the changing behaviors and expectations relative to retail and shopping today, what do you sort of see as the most important shifts that you're paying attention to?
Right. Well, one thing we're looking at, as many others are, now that brick and mortar stores are reopened, right? We had a long period where they were not, is just how consumer expectations for the store associate have changed throughout the pandemic, right? I think that, everybody would probably agree that consumer habits have shifted pretty dramatically through the course of the pandemic. And so we look at things across a spectrum of retail experiences. So we're looking at shopping behaviors or checkout, or what consumers are looking at for experience, for convenience or for clienteling. And we've seen a growth in all of those areas. But as we look at even some of the research that we've done, in addition to the anecdotal experience that we have with our own retailers, we look at today's shoppers that are looking for store associate interactions that are making their lives easier and more convenient, right? If anything was highlighted during the pandemic, it's that. I think there are things that are table stakes that have been around for a while, but now I think that they're the minimum expectation for consumers with store associates. So, for example, we did a survey where 69% of the consumers told us that they agree or strongly agree that curbside pickup is a must, that they expect that. Another 66% said that I expect to be able to, when I come into the store, for the store associate, if they don't have an item in stock, to find it someplace else. So whether I get it shipped to my home or whether I walk away with it, I want to be able to find that. I think that these types of things have sort of heightened consumer expectations to the possible of what's possible in a store versus just a cash and carry experience. So now that mobility is much more common in the store, where a store associate is equipped with a mobile device to interact with the consumer any place in the store, I want to be able to, as a consumer, have the store associate be able to check inventory while they're standing in front of me. In fact, 66% of the respondents said exactly that. Another 54% said, I expect a store associate to have a mobile device that they can help me wherever I live in the store versus having to walk to the front or the back or wherever the cash rate might be. And I think to that end, the other interesting statistic here is that consumers, because they're expecting mobility in the store, are expecting to be checked out any place. Again, not to a cash wrap in the front or the back, but I want to be able to be mobile, and I want you to check me out as I stand in the aisle and I've tried on the shoes or I've done whatever, so I can take my package and my receipt and I can move on. So I think those are some of the biggest behavioral shifts that we have, which is just consumer expectations in the store of being able to not just have a cash and carry experience, but really be able to get what they need when they walk in from wherever it is within the brand.
That's really interesting. There's a couple things that really stand out to me there. Obviously, the consumer is shopping differently online, and those same sort of expectations for that level of convenience and I guess sort of like anywhere assistance is now reflected in what they think about the physical store experience as well. And so thinking about that as the backdrop, this consumer and their new expectation for shopping, particularly as we talked about within an in-store context, what are some of the things that you're hearing about from your retail partners, your clients, in terms of their challenges that they're facing and the things that you're ultimately helping them to solve for?
Sure. Well, one of the things I think is kind of important to note is that we're really talking about retailers who have already embraced some level of omnichannel. For those retailers who haven't embraced omnichannel and actually have multiple channels, I would argue that they will be gone before we know it. Actually, they will be extinct if they haven't started to do that, because that is the new norm for consumer expectations. During the pandemic, omni adoption was a question of survival. Brands had to provide these services. They had inventory that was languishing in the stores that they couldn't move. They had store associates that they wanted to put to work. And if the local regulations allowed 5 associates to get into the store, gosh, they wanted them to be in those stores so they could actually put them to work and not have to furlough them even further. So there were lots of motivations for the retailers to be able to embrace these sort of omni services. But they also used the time to sort of experiment and see what was going to work and what wasn't going to work. Many of these associates have enjoyed this period of time. They are no longer just behind a cash wrap. They've become brand ambassadors in some cases in the store, and they have a heightened sense of even allegiance to the company that they work for.
Yeah, it's really interesting. When you talk about operationalizing this, are there any sort of best practices that you can kind of point to in terms of like what really works well? And I'm particularly interested if you have a thought on this, is just specifically as we're thinking about putting new solutions in the hands of employees.
Right. Well, one of the things that happened during the pandemic was that for the vast majority of retailers from Omnichannel, they had to train their store associates how to pick, pack, and ship orders. That wasn't necessarily a behavior or even something that they were good at in the past, right? So the efficiency of their ability to take an order in and be able to find the merchandise on the floor easily and quickly, to be able to put it in a box so that it's presented well and it's not just thrown in a box, and then it's ultimately makes its way to the consumer. There are new things that happened during the pandemic that we're now asking the store associate to be good at and to learn how to do. And just that operational practice of how does the store associate, how does the store manager manage it? How does HQ know if the orders are being fulfilled in a timely manner? And so on some of these solutions that were put in place, the idea was just get the orders into the store and then we'll figure it out. But maybe the integration was a little choppy, or it wasn't quite right, or maybe they didn't have the right analytics or the right controls in place to make sure that they were meeting the SLAs that they set with their customers. So those are the kinds of things I mean about operationalizing them. It's okay to say, I can do curbside pickup. It's okay to say I can ship from the store. But now we really want to make sure that that brand experience is solid. And we want to be able to do it in a way that is efficient and effective for the store associate. Technology helps that. Mobile devices in the store make this way more possible. It moves them away from paper and onto something they can walk around the store with. So mobility in this particular example is critical in their ability to be able to operationalize this and make it effective.
Amazing. And as we're now, we've been touching on this idea of mobility within the context of the store. On one hand, there's a sort of notion of technology in the hands of the employee, and then there's obviously also the technology in the hands of the consumer. And I wonder what your sort of thought is as we think about what role mobile plays within the store, specifically within the hands of a consumer, and what can make that experience better or more optimized, I suppose.
We have to assume that consumers want to be able to interact with a brand from anywhere, right? They might want to start that interaction in digital, right? On the web or on their mobile device. Maybe they have a branded consumer app in their hand and they want to be able to use that to be able to interact with the brand while they're on their commute home or whatever it might be, right? And they want to be able to finish that transaction physically by walking into a store and talking to a sales associate and pick that up. At NewStore, we were sort of founded on the belief here that consumers wanted to engage with a brand and not a channel. So we think about this in that, consumers love an in-store experience, and they love it and how they interact with the brand through the store, and they like their digital experience as well. And that's important to them. Things that they can do digitally, they'd like to be able to do in the store. So providing that sort of blurring of digital transactions. So whether it's a digital pay type, I want to be able to pay with PayPal in the store. I want to be able to pay with some other digital method. I want to be able to scan something with my mobile device and get better product information while I'm standing in the store because I have a device in my hand that enables me to do that. We do see that the consumer's mobile device is a bit of an untapped source. Certainly we have many retailers who have done a phenomenal job building direct-to-consumer mobile apps as part of their omni-channel experience, right? Their curated experience for their best consumers.
And I love that that sort of insight that you shared about NewStore's belief about people's desire to interact with a brand regardless of channel or not a channel. And so this kind of flows into my next question. So within the context of this report that we're doing, one of the areas that we're sort of thinking about is what we're calling on-demand brand. And for us, this is really sort of looking at ways that brands or retailers can get closer to their consumers, whether that's physical proximity or just sort of by looking for more ways to kind of integrate themselves into the shopping or post-purchase experience.
Yeah.
As you kind of think about that, are there any specific opportunities that kind of come to mind in terms of things that NewStore is thinking about, or just more broadly ideas that you think are sort of exciting in that realm?
So I think you hit on something really important, right? It's really about we think about this in terms of how does the consumer engage the way that they would prefer with the brand, right? And I think that the direct to consumer apps are a bit of an untapped source, as I said before. I think that you've got large brands, or you've got I don't necessarily have to be large, but you've got brands who have built rich consumer experiences, app experiences for their brand loyalists, or for their best customers, or for their most loyal customers. Video and audio and content in that device, but also to connect that device to the store associate. Right? I want to be able to reach out to you as a store associate and contact you. I have an idea. I have a shopping cart. I'd like to come in later and pick that up. How do I take what's on my phone and actually share that with my favorite store so that they can know what I'm looking at, or they can help me with merchandise selection. I think the other thing that's very possible for consumers while they're in the store is to be able to take their device and do a bit of self-service. So if I can walk up to a rack and I can see that there's a barcode, I could scan the barcode and maybe it can give me some additional product information. Or maybe I see a QR code and it gives me some additional experiential information about what goes well with this item, or accessories that need to be purchased with this item, or those types of things. If you think about your example, you asked about post-purchase. I also think that, again, as a consumer, when I leave the store and I have a receipt, digital or paper, whatever it might be, ideally it's digital, but then I can take a code, a QR code perhaps, that's on that digital receipt. I can scan it and it immediately connects me in a chat to the store, right? I'm in control. So we know that privacy is a growing concern across, it's globally a concern. So we want the consumer to be in control of that. But as the consumer interacts with the store or the store associate, they might have a problem when they get home. Or, I bought this thing and I'm really regretting I didn't buy the accessory that went with it. I want that as well. Can you ship that to me? So there's an awful lot of, even, pre-purchase, in-store and post-purchase kind of experiences that, how do we enable those types of experiences for the consumer? And how do we enable the store associate to better serve that consumer through those types of technologies?
Yeah. So just as a last question, part of what we're sort of exploring in today's conference is looking at 20 years in the future, or 21, I suppose, do you have any bold predictions for retail 20 years from now?
I think if you think about the pace of technology advancement, somebody used an example with me the other day about going to WWDC in 2010 when Steve Jobs stood up and showed the iPad. And if you think about in the last 10 or 11 years, however you're counting that, just the pace of change that has happened in that span of time, it's been pretty remarkable, actually. So technologies and things that we would have thought about 5 or 6 or 10 years ago, we would have said, no, nobody's ever going to do that. They're not going to have a digital device in their hand when they walk into the store. That's not going to happen. I think that there will be a day when things like, dare I say, things like augmented reality will be an expectation for a retailer. I think you have retailers today, innovative retailers that are experimenting with this technology. What I do think is true, and I don't know if this is a bold prediction or not, because I think that for a lot of years, people have been predicting the demise of the physical retail store. But I certainly think that the role of the physical retail store will be important despite the rise of online retail. I think, in fact, brick and mortar retail will thrive. I think it will become more experiential in some cases. And experience doesn't mean, I have fun in the store. It means that I can get the experience with that brand that I want, right? And I think that technology will enable that. And I think that you'll have both traditional and non-traditional uses of technology in the physical store that will continue to put that consumer front and center. And I think for retailers who continue to make sure that the consumer is in their mind's eye with everything that they do, those technology enables like augmented reality, or, if you look at sort of the touch screen sort of, immersive experience that happened in a store, in a dressing room, or whatever that might be. I think those will be commonplace in a very short period of time.
I love the sort of notion of, again, like physical retail is is not going anywhere. It's just changing in the way that it's presented or the experience around it. And this idea of experimentation came up a couple times in our conversation, and I think it's very much the right way for companies to be thinking about things.
I think, we've seen this grow, over the years, right? Retailers that are on the bleeding edge of some of these innovations and willing to try and fail and see what consumers are interested in. In some cases, it takes years for these technologies to find a home, and in some cases, they are adapted really, really quickly. But we have to thank for that the retailers who, and I also think the other thing I would say is I think it's not even so much about the retailers right now. I think consumers are, their expectations are higher now than they have ever been, and they will drive us, as retail solution providers and as retailers, to continue to elevate our game in terms of providing the kind of experience that they want. They are demanding now. They know technology can deliver it. They have it in their hand, and they don't expect to walk into a store and have it be an experience from what they would have thought 5 years ago or 6 years ago. They really want it to be keeping pace with what they know is possible that they can do in the rest of their lives.
Well, thank you so much, Jane. This has been a great conversation, and hopefully we'll be able to connect in 20 years and see what came true.
Absolutely. Thank you, Scott.
Awesome. Okay, thanks.
NewStore is a turnkey omnichannel store solution for global DTC brands. The company delivers Omnichannel-as-a-Service with the first cloud platform combining point of sale, order management, inventory, and clienteling. It's fast, flexible, easy to use, and all from an iPhone.